long trail through frozen fog and mist. The cold sat through their bodies like a demon's acid kiss. The war had fractured all their souls as they staggered through the rain, looking for a safe harbor, a place to ease the pain.
Be wary, soldiers of the world, careful as you stride. The sentinel is watching, from him you cannot hide.
The leader felt uneasy as the portal opened wide. No one but him could see it as he walked alone inside. The pathway closed behind him, there on the throne of gold sat the demigod of history, a creature eons old.
Be wary, soldiers of the world, careful as you stride. The sentinel is watching, from him you cannot hide. With darkness, golden vengeance, he'll trap you with his lies. You'll never satisfy his hunger. The sentinel never dies.
The ancient ones spoke to him and said, I created thee to plunder, kill, and pillage, and worship only me. The faithful great pretender troubles with us once again. Usurper of the ages to usher in the end.
Be wary, people of the world, careful as you stride. The sentinel is watching, from him you cannot hide. Don't let darkness, golden vengeance, trap you with his lies. You'll never satisfy his hunger, 'cause the sentinel never dies.
Beaming to you like a whirlwind. In syndication and on all the apps worldwide. You are listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio Network.
And here we are. Boy, I can't believe it's 11th of January. Well, the stock markets, well, they're saying in the very near future, well, it's going to take about a 20% drop. That is really scary. Well, today is National Milk Day. Have you been drinking your milk?
No, I sure haven't. I'm going to have to make up for that one. How about you?
I don't like milk unless it's chocolate milk. I do drink a lot of chocolate milk. But regular milk, somehow, after I saw that goat milking of a goat and Cocoa Puffs, I just haven't been, well, interested in drinking milk. Also, it's National Step in a Puddle and Make a Big Splash Day. Uh-huh. When's the last time you done that?
Boy, it's been a while. I'll tell you. I try to stay away from those mud puddles. It might be deeper than what you think, Gary.
Well, I just keep thinking about that one. I had that dream. I was walking down this gravel road, and there was a little mud puddle, and I stepped into it. And it wasn't a mud puddle. It was a black hole. And I was being stretched and torn and all that stuff. A dream I wouldn't like. I like the dream of the naked ladies, not going down a black hole and having your body stretch as it gathers all this other space garbage.
So, what was the atmospheric conditions inside the black hole?
I don't know, but I was watching my arms get longer, my legs stretching. About the only thing it didn't get any bigger was my penis.
Oh, boy. That's the wrong black hole, I guess.
I guess it was not a favorite one of anything. I didn't know this. I'm glad you knew it, and probably everybody else knows this, but I didn't know this. Guess what?
Tell me.
Okay, well, you know what? Whales have a hand in their flipper with 5 fingers.
Yeah, I seen that a few years ago on National Geographic. I guess it's from, I don't know, I guess it's called evolution from back when they crawled.
And walked on the earth. Could you imagine a whale walking on the earth?
Yeah, you know what? We still got fishes today that's kind of in between, so to speak. But yeah, that would be quite a sight to see a big whale crawling up out of the water.
Yeah. Well, NASA's spotted another satellite planet. And this planet's about 100 light years away. A little bit smaller than Earth, but not much. They said it has water, oceans, and it could support human life. So why are we talking about going to Mars? Duh, I know why. You know why we want to go to Mars? No, it's not for Mars candy bars. I ruled that out a long time ago when I got old enough to realize that Mars candy bars did not come from Mars. I don't even know how they came up with that name. But besides that, they said on Mars they found, a big, huge crater full of gems with diamonds and rubies, oh boy.
Yeah, they should send one of them probes up and just mine it and bring it on back. But, I've heard a couple of them planets rain that kind of stuff.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? But you know what? If we had a whole bunch of diamonds just brought back like that, and gold, like one asteroid that had gold and all this other type of stuff on it, do you realize the dollar wouldn't be worth anything because it would be so much of it? It would be so common.
That's true. When you told me that today, I'm like, that debunks the theory of all these ufologists saying, these aliens coming here to mine, get resources. But there's so much out there, Gary.
Well, it's possible. Well, a big shout out to Barb, to Tom from Metatron Power and Light, which we displayed their newest release. Christopher George, which now has a podcast. You might want to check that out. And Barb, I saw what you were doing over the weekend. You do not supposed to be eating candy. It's not healthy for you. Well, in Egypt, they found another tomb. And this tomb is 4,400 years old, and it had perfectly preserved paintings.
Oh, that would be quite a find, those paintings alone. They're always finding something. You'd think after all this time they think they found it all, but there's so much. I don't even think they got the tip of the iceberg what could be found there.
Who knows what they might have found? But it's interesting. This last week they found like 80 mummies in a passage in the Great Pyramid.
Yeah, I read something about that. I think we were talking a little bit about it too.
I'm calling bunk. Okay, I got so mad I deleted my TikTok account today, because a lot of people on TikTok are, there are a lot of BSers out there besides me and you. But and one of them even hit the news that, how the time machine inventor, Mad Man Mike Malcolm, disappeared, and they're kind of leading up. He disappeared off of his time machine. I'm going to clarify this. I am going to clarify this because I know Art. Well, I knew Art real well. I also talked to Madman long after he's supposed to have disappeared because he was going to come on my show, and somehow, I'm not the most perfect housekeeper, and I lost his phone number, and I could never get it back. Here's what happened, okay? Supposedly, he did an experiment where he went into it, and he ended up across the country. For days and weeks, he didn't even know where he was at. It took months to get back. When he came back to his warehouse where he had all this time, transporting equipment, that he stole the transformers from the power company, but don't tell anybody, that it was all cleared out. And then years went by, and my friend Art found him, got him back on the show. This is just before Art passed on, maybe about 6 or 7 months before he passed. And, they recapped, where he went to Hawaii and lived for a while. He moved around and stuff like that. And no, he did not burn up in one of his experiments. Like all these, people write garbage all the time to sell it. You know that.
I do. As a matter of fact, Mad Mike was just 4 years ago, was in Missouri. Then he moved somewhere. So that's my last
Yeah, he was.
trace.
Yeah, because that's the last time I talked to him. He was in Missouri. He was going to come on my show. I had it all set up and everything. And then, I wrote his phone number down on something. And, here's Gary. He's done with it. He wads up the paper, throws it away. And I evidently threw the wrong piece of paper away. Well, again, we already talked about, a Mars crater just full of diamonds. I want to go to Mars. I'm greedy. You know that?
Yeah, I know you are, but you still look for that candy bar. I know you would.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Have you ever wondered how Mars Candy Company came up with Mars Candy? Is it one day they looked up, oh, there's Mars. Hey, why don't we name our candy company now? Why do they call it the Moon Candy?
Yeah, it is a unique name, I got to say. I don't know. It never ate very many of them, but that is a unique name. How did they get it? They're going to have a green cheese moon pie or something?
I don't know, but I haven't mooned anybody since high school. Or maybe it was college. I can't remember.
That's not what few people have been saying.
Well, that was accidental. I came into the studio and the camera was on. Well, a Stanford scientist says in the next few decades, okay, you remember Mad Max?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's basically, he said, what our civilization in the next 20, 30 years is going to be like. We're going to be living in the Mad Max scenario. Everything that we know in society is going to be broke down. It's going to be, burned out cities all across the world from nuclear war. And that is really, really scary.
It is scary. I've always said that, hey, all we got to do is lose the grid system, and we'll turn into that in about 2 days.
Yeah, again, I was reading about the grid system. If it goes down, buddy, it is going to take at least a minimum of 2 years to get it back up nationwide. Now, there's going to be little pockets that will be opening up and back on, but overall, and, guess what? It'll be kind of really, scary to watch society just go down the tube.
I'm telling you what, just remember those toilet paper wars. And them little pockets, those represents one person having a generator if nobody had nothing. So that's going to be like, everybody's going to be going to those to get what they can get. Yeah,
tell me about that. I got about a case of toilet paper. Anybody want to buy it? Just 29 cents real. I still remember down at the main intersection down by where I live, down at the lights, there was a guy in a van, and he was selling toilet paper for $5 a roll.
And a van down by the river. Did he have some of that hand sanitizer to go with it?
Oh, speaking about toilet paper, well, I'll wait. I'd wait after this one. I got to pull myself together before that.
Yeah.
Just thinking about those stains. Scientists just found the tomb of an Egyptian god. What god was it, James?
Osiris. As a matter of fact, I've seen those pictures. Now that's amazing. Now my question is, who's going to open it and what are they going to find?
They are scared to open it, by the way.
Oh, well, yeah, there may be a curse. All those have curses linked to them, Gary.
Oh, I know. That could be one of the big ones. You know that.
That's Osiris. That's no small puppet there. That's a big boy.
Yeah. Well, guess what? Space travelers, DNA. We always and I've been telling this, the astronauts in the space station, right? After they're up there for a year, when they come down, they can't walk for a while. Their brains enlarge, their hearts enlarge. They have all kinds of problems. Some of them even have been coming down with different cancers. And now they're saying that the problem is being out in space for a prolonged period of time is going to cause mutations to human, DNA, which is going to cause all these things.
Hey, look, a perfect example was those twins. The one went up for 6 months. He come back, the DNA had changed. They even looked different. I think the one was even shorter.
Oh yeah. That's interesting. I love KFC. I won't say the chicken outfit. KFC. I like, this one chicken place, right? I just love the original chicken. Well, now scientists are growing chickens with dinosaur legs to see if they can manipulate the DNA and bring back, well, dinosaurs. Could you imagine? I want a breast and I want 2 dinosaur legs, original to go.
Listen, that would be, you'd have to have a wheelbarrow to take it out to your truck. That's crazy.
I know, but why? Okay, why don't they, well, chickens, honestly, are the closest thing left over from dinosaurs, believe it or not, other than my ex-mother-in-law, God, whatever. That's why they're experimenting with chickens. And speaking about chickens, have you looked at the price of eggs yet lately?
I have. Now, I know that changes in different areas, but they're around $2 to $3 here.
Yeah, how about around $9 a dozen where I'm at?
Wow, that's the goose that laid, or chicken that laid the golden egg.
Yeah, and then some of the Costco's, depending on what part of the country, and up to $12 a dozen for eggs. That has to be some very special eggs.
Boy, I'll say, because let me tell you something, chickens aren't exactly the cleanest animal in the world either.
Well, they eat anything. They're cannibals.
Listen, when you say anything, I mean anything too. You're right.
These people have pet goats.
Oh,
okay, that's one thing. But I'm talking about these people that have pet pigs.
Oh yeah.
You know what? They're very intelligent. Actually, pigs are more intelligent than dogs. But if you don't feed them for a while,
oh boy,
they're worse than a cat.
Let me tell you something. Around here, the moonshiners, they keep pigs around because pigs will eat people. They'll eat anything except cucumbers and oranges.
Well, there was a serial killer. That's how he used to get rid of all his victims. He used to throw them in the pig pen, and the pigs would eat them up, including the bones. The only way he got caught was years went by. They suspected him. And then just a couple years ago, they decided to take some DNA out of the pig pen. And besides finding DNA from pig shit, they found a lot of DNA from human corpses.
Yeah, the pigs were eating long pigs. So yeah, that's come full circle on that one.
Yeah, that's why I don't like pork chops.
But
when's the last time you seen a cow go eat a human?
Well, it's been a while.
Well, I don't know. And now, cattle mutilation. I've been doing, because, I've been really sick here lately. And I've been watching a lot of documentaries. Then I go through and do some science research with different publications and all that stuff. Let's be honest with you. 99.9% of cattle mutilations aren't from ETs. They're not from the military doing special things to see if they have mad cow disease. So they're, doing experiments on people's bulls and cows. It comes down to this. When a cow dies, and if the temperature is in the mid-60s up, what happens as, when you die, you kind of bloat from the gases?
Oh, yeah.
Well, a cow or a bull, when they die, the gases force out all their sexual organs out of their body. It pushes them out, including the tongue and the eyes will pop out after a day or so. And what they came to a conclusion, the predators around, but the biggest predator is bugs. If you have a temperature in the mid-60s or warmer, bugs can eat, I hate to say it, the udder in less than a day's time. They can it's gone. Like it never existed.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, my grandfather's farm, I was on a lot of hours, and I've seen different things on farms. And let me tell you something, I've seen a whole, I don't know what you call them, a herd or gamble or whatever of possums come up out of them. They'll clean them up, and they'll be hollow, and you'll think, where'd everything go? And possums did that alone, not to mention the bugs. And when they tear, it looks like precision cuts.
Yeah, like laser cuts.
It does. So
okay, now I'm going to go to bed here tonight all depressed because 95% of the cattle mutilations are probably not from the little green men from Mars or from planet Pluto or whatever. It's just that the cow died and just croaked there and bloated and did its thing. Well, scientists discovered a new cure for baldness after they were investigating DNA from caveman genes.
Oh, boy.
Now, I'm not talking about Levi genes. I'm talking about DNA genes.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the other ones. Tell me.
There's not enough time. Doomsday's clock announcement is going to come on January 24th. It's not now going to be minutes. it's going to be a matter of seconds before it, well, strikes.
That's going to be the closest it's ever been since what? Cuban Missile Crisis, maybe?
Now, maybe even closer than it's ever been. How's that?
Yeah.
Even when the Cuban Missile Crisis, it was 20 minutes till, roughly.
Oh,
we're talking seconds.
Seconds. Oh my goodness, that's scary.
Like, oh my God, I got enough time to zip up my pants before we're gone. Elvis Presley jet that's been sitting in the desert for 40 years finally sold for $260,000.
Oh, it's not even flyable. It's been sitting that long.
No, it's not. They bought it, put it in a museum. Guess what?
What?
The U.S. Congress and the Consumer Product Safety Commission is trying to get a ban on all gas stoves, restricting them for use and sales in the United States.
Boy, that's
eat that up with your next time you cook your steak, buddy.
That's going to cause an uproar. I don't have a gas stove, but a lot of people do. They have a lot of gas appliances around here, not to mention the whole country.
Yeah. Well, that's really, upset. Well, guess what? Scientists have discovered dinosaurs that are tiny and actually are swimmers.
Oh, yeah. I'd hate to come across one of those in a deserted lake somewhere. It might just make you a meal, Gary.
Yeah, and a discovery of a bird with a head of a T-Rex. And scientists are, trying to get more. They got one of them, and they're experimenting it. A bird with a head of a T-Rex. Now, I'm telling you what, don't do any bird calls because you never know what's going to come your way. We'll be back after this break. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio. I'm the host, Gary. That is JC, I think.
To your heart, I have been lost for all of this time. Take me to your heart, where it is safe. You know I will not let you down. Take me to your heart. I need to calm down. To your heart, I need to tell you how much I have missed you so. I feel cold. I need to get warm, baby. Feeling cold in my soul. Where are you now?
There it is, right in the night sky, the mysterious moon. Constance Victoria Briggs, author of The Encyclopedia of Moon Mysteries, brings us her new book, The Moon's Galactic History, a look at the moon's extraterrestrial past and its connection to Earth. It follows past and present research about the moon's mysterious history, with a focus on extraterrestrial presence. Briggs examines such questions as, are there moon inhabitants? Are the UFOs seen around the Earth today connected to the moon? Is there a city on the moon? And more. The Moon's Galactic History, a look at the moon's extraterrestrial past and its connection to Earth, can be purchased now on Amazon. Also, check out the author's website, www.constancevictoriabriggs.com. Do you remember how great paranormal talk radio was in the 80s and 90s? Night Dreams Talk Radio brings back to you talk radio like you remember, with your host, Gary Anderson, broadcasting to you live from his secret compound deep in the great Northwest. Now, here's Gary.
And here I am, and I can't find my golf club. JC, do you know where I put it?
Yeah, it's underneath your desk right there.
I thought you were going to tell me where I could put it, what you said earlier today. That's what I thought you were going to say. I was scared to ask you that one.
It was tempting.
I know. Who's our guest tonight?
Well, our guest tonight is Chris Staudinger, and he is a tour guide in Tacoma, Washington, not far from you, that owns and operates Pretty Gritty Tours. He was a travel journalist traveling the world with his wife for over 10 years before coming back to Tacoma and helping people get access to the greatest history and stories of the region. He specializes in Washington state history and paranormal investigations.
Well, Chris, welcome to the show. How are you doing here this Wednesday night?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic. Thanks so much for having me on.
Oh, yeah. I noticed you on TikTok, and, I really am intrigued, because, every state has weird, strange, haunted places, and I didn't realize we had that many.
It's an astounding collection in the, Puget Sound area, and I feel like they just get overlooked so often. I don't know what it is.
Wow. What got you into the paranormal, these strange, mystic, scary, haunted type places?
I mean, I have always been just curious, I think is the easiest answer for that. I have been attracted to mystery from a very early age. And in my relentless pursuit of tracking down good stories, some of them just arrive to this point where you're like, I have no idea what the answer is for that. So it's become sort of a passion for me.
I really didn't believe in strangeness and ghosts. But, I've been in broadcasting almost 50 years. And back in the, late 98, 99 to about 2001, I took a break from broadcasting. And there used to be a camera store right downtown Tacoma. Right there on the main street. And now it is a title company. But that store was there from back in the 30s. Have you ever seen the collapse of the Narrows Bridge film?
Oh, I have, absolutely.
Yeah.
It was those two photographers, wasn't it?
Yeah, Ed was Barney Elliott, and his friend are the one who filmed it. Well, Barney Elliott owned the camera shop in Tacoma, which I was the general manager for a few years. And, I when I took the job, the manager was there. They let him go. He told me, "You're not going to like this place, Gary. It's haunted." Okay, yeah. I figured, he's just saying that because I just took over his job, right? Mm-hmm. And then there was we had 4 or 5 salesmen, and 2 of them were, in the military. They worked part-time in the shop. One was a ranger. I also had an ex-Navy SEAL that worked for me for a while, and they refused to go in the basement because they said it was haunted. And, and here I'm the general manager. I don't do that stuff. I do some sales and I, order stuff and just do what at least you can do as a general manager, right?
Right.
And, about a year went by and, all of a sudden I'm having my employees rebelling. I am not going in the basement to get product because our basement, supplied the inventory for our store and 2 other stores at that time we had. And finally, they rebelled. They said, "We're not going down there. If you want it, you go get it." Well, I got mad and fired one guy, and then I ended up going and get the stuff. And I tell you, something is weird going on in that building because I was walking down this aisle, dimly lit, narrow, old basement. This building was built in the 1860s, 1870s, old. It used to have like 13 stories. Back in the late 60s, they cut it down to like 4 or 5 stories because it wasn't safe. And I was down there, and somebody punched me in the shoulder. And I figured, okay, one of the, employees is mad at me. We're going to be in a fight. I swung around to hit him. There was nobody there. Nobody.
Doesn't shock me in the least for that area.
But Chris, it got worse because at that time, because I had a major electronic background, I got stuck cleaning the sensors. That's when the time frame that digital cameras were coming and hitting the market.
Yeah.
And the sensors had to be cleaned on a regular basis. They would get dusty. And the only time I could clean them was late at night when there was no air movement of dust and stuff like that. So I'd be down there at like 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, cleaning cameras, people's sensors on their camera. Now, this old store, like it used to be a hotel and a brothel back in the, 1880s, 1890s, early 1900s. And I had my office downstairs. I had everything double locked from the inside. And I heard somebody going up the stairs. We still had the old hotel staircase to go up to the offices. And I'm going, oh God, somebody must have hid in here after we closed. So I went and checked. There was nobody there. Then a few nights later, Chris, I was in there. And now I hear multiple footsteps going up the staircase and creaking. And I'm getting kind of freaked out, but I figured, hey, maybe I'm just tired. I think a couple weeks go by and down there late again. And now I'm hearing footprints or steps going up the stairs. And I'm hearing men and women talking and laughing muffled. That's when I gave my notice.
I don't blame you at all.
So have you run across anything strange like that?
Absolutely. And especially, you're talking about that downtown section of Tacoma, right? It is ripe with things like that. So much of that district down there is, like you said, from the 1880s, 1890s.
Yeah.
And all of like Whiskey Row, Pack Ave. That was the seedy underbelly of Tacoma for a long time there, where all of the prohibition, speakeasies, prostitution was really centralized and focused.
Well, yeah. Here's what when I did investigating on it, because I got really curious. Well, when it was a brothel at one point, a guy killed a prostitute in one of the rooms and put her body in pieces in a, one of these chests, shipping, whatever they call.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then.
Yeah, like the containers.
Yeah. And then when I did more research, the basement back in the 1880s, 1890s used to be a bar all the way up to World War I. So there was a bar down in there, and I found out that a couple people got shot and killed down, because you know how Tacoma is. All the ships come in, the sailors came in, and back in that time frame, they weren't the most lovable people.
You take anyone out of that long of isolation, put them immediately in a place where it's nothing but whiskey and action, and yeah, you're bound to get some unsavory aspects, I think.
You need to check that place out.
Absolutely. If it's the one that I'm thinking of, then I've definitely gone and looked, and got to experience a lot of it there. Because one of the things I'm so fascinated about is Tacoma's, underground scene.
Well, yeah, again, it's like Seattle. They buried a lot of the underground and put a road on top of it. So if you go certain parts down, down by the waterfront, for example, downtown, in different areas, you'll see like doors and windows, on the side of a bulkhead.
Absolutely. Because they were terracing the city, right? They built it into the hillside. And so on your uphill portion of every city block, the bottom portion of the building is effectively underground. And a lot of that space has just been, a vault for secrets and misdeeds over the years.
Yeah, and probably still are, too, in certain areas.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Tacoma loves to keep itself consistent, if nothing else, I think.
Oh, yeah. Now, how about, have you investigated the underground Seattle?
I've done a little bit here and there for Seattle, but for the most part, I focus my attention on every other part of Washington. I feel like Seattle gets such attention just by itself, that there's so many other parts that could use a little boost in their storytelling.
Well, there is, going up towards the mountain pass, there's a lake there, and I heard rumors that a bus or something with school kids in there or something went into it years ago.
Yeah, Lake Chelan. Lake Chelan had an incident. I'm trying to remember when it was specifically. I just did something on this recently. But yeah, an entire busload of kids on their way to school with the bus driver flew off the edge of the road and into Chelan. And it took them several days before they could recover the bus and the people that had been trapped inside of it. And some of those bodies had never been recovered. And Lake Chelan is intensely deep. And just the way that it's made up and the temperature of it, it doesn't give up its dead very regularly, if at all. If somebody disappears in Lake Chelan, they have a tendency to stay disappeared.
That's scary, too. Has there been any hauntings or any strange occurrences where that bus went in? Have people seen ghosts or anything from it?
There have been multiple times over the years that people have said, in the wintertime, that they'll see what looks like a kid standing on the edge of the road as if they're really cold trying to flag down a car. And when people stop inevitably to try and give them help or anything, always gone, disappear into the fog. The one that really got me, though, is that, Chelan is a really big summer destination. People go up for the lake sports.
Oh, yeah.
And over the years, I had friends out there, and they always had stories about you go out on the lake, you'd be swimming around, and that sometimes when people would dive down, it would look like there was somebody on the bottom towards the down underwater looking up at them. And they would get freaked out and get out of the water. No one would ever come up. But they would every now and then just see someone, like a face, staring back up at them from underneath the water.
That would be scary.
That would not be the day that I would look forward to.
Oh, no. Could you imagine you're swimming in a lake or somewhere and all of a sudden you see a face staring at you coming out?
Well, Lake Chelan isn't isolated in that. Lake Crescent over on the peninsula actually has had multiple stories of that happening years and years, again and again, that people who dive there, because it's also quite deep and clear, will see people underwater. And there's a lot to back that up. I think the most famous story from that one was that a husband once murdered his wife and then tied up her body, put weights in these blankets, and sank it down to the bottom of the lake. And years later, she floated up to the surface because the chemical makeup of that lake actually reacted with the fat in her body and turned her flesh into soap. And so she became buoyant after a few years. And they identified her through dental records and found that this lady of the lake was this woman that everyone thought had just disappeared or run away from an abusive husband, but in fact, he had murdered her.
Yeah, that's one thing, too. A lot of people who kill people and drop them in the bay or the ocean or in a lake, they don't realize that, that body can surface. I got a real one for you that is really, really scary.
Ooh, lay on me.
Well, I don't know about that. But when I was young, maybe about 8, 9 years old, my grandparents lived on Whidbey Island. They were farmers. They came here, to the Seattle, Tacoma area. And actually near Seattle, White Center area. And they rented a house. And my grandmother, she only, at her age, she took jobs like, babysitting, cleaning people's houses. They were in there for a couple of weeks, and I remember they would come over to our house every Friday and Saturday night to watch TV. And my grandmother would be telling my mom, my dishes would move in the cupboard. Like I'd have the cups in this one cupboard, and then I'd go the next day to get a cup and it's over in this cupboard. Or, the dishes would move around. And then my grandfather spoke up and he goes, we get this horrible smell it smelled like something died. And it would last for a short period of time and go away. And this went on for months and months and months. And my grandmother was getting to the point, she said to my grandfather, hey, either we go buy a house, you find another place, or I'm leaving you. I'm not staying here any longer. So they moved out. And it wasn't till when they moved out, the new tenant moved in. And for some reason, they had to go underneath the crawl space. Now, this made the news and everything. What they found was a blanket with chains wrapped around it and a skeleton of a woman. It turned out the owner of the house murdered his wife and had her underneath the crawl space.
Wow. Man, I feel like stuff like that, lingers for a long time, right?
Well, something because, again, first I thought, well, maybe my grandmother was taking her Kool-Aid and lemonade and, she had a tendency of aging it in the refrigerator and making it into cheap wine. And I figured, well, maybe she's drinking too much of it. But no, it was like all the time she was upset because the dishes would move. The silverware would move. Things would be moved around. She'd do the dishes. She would put it up on the, on the counter. She would go in the morning. They're put away. This weird things like that was going on. So maybe it was that lady that was murdered by her husband was trying to communicate.
I wouldn't be shocked. I feel like the voices that get silenced find a way of coming back out, especially in this area.
Oh, yeah. How about hotels, haunted hotels? What have you found on those?
What's interesting is Stadium High School.
Ooh,
right?
Yeah.
So Stadium High School was designed to be a hotel. They built it in 1891. They eventually ran out of funding. By the 1890s, the project was entirely scrapped.
Now, wasn't that being built for the railroad or something, if I remember?
Yeah, the Northern Pacific
Yeah.
Railroad had the intention of turning it into the greatest luxury hotel on the West Coast. And by all means, if they had finished the project, it absolutely would have been. Up on the cliffside there, it's like this massive French castle. It's gorgeous. But it got abandoned, turned into a public high school, and that is without a doubt one of the most haunted places I've ever experienced in this area out here.
What type of things, Chris? What type of haunts are going on there?
It started tame. When I started doing the historic tours of that structure, the chief engineer used to tell me that he would see a girl in the building. And that they would catch her every now and then going around a corner, or they would see her in a classroom once or twice. Some of the night engineers had said that they had heard her talk to them, say hi, and that she was pretty much passive, right? That she wasn't you never felt this sense of dread, but they always were on edge because this girl was wandering around the school. And when I started doing it, I saw her a few times. Well, more and more that I got into the history of this region, I found that there's this repeating pattern of a 14-year-old girl disappearing from the area almost exactly every 7 years in Tacoma.
Wow.
And it started right around the time that the hotel was being built, right there in what was Old Woman's Gulch, or is now the Stadium High Football Bowl. And the more and more that I started looking into it and finding out this repeating abduction was happening, and that like every now and then a new serial killer would emerge in Tacoma, right? So I think Ted Bundy was the most famous of our serial killers that got his origin here in Tacoma and then branched outwards. Jake Bird was another name that I started investigating in the area, and it was almost always the same story out here. And after I folded that into our ghost tour and was telling the story more and more about that, I showed up to do the tour at Stadium High one night. And I always showed up, I put down this bag of gear in the main teacher's lounge, and I go through the building to unlock all the doors. And I got into the basement, and I was taking pictures down there, getting them prepped for some marketing stuff. And a box of documents slid out from behind a wall. And when I went around the corner to see what had happened, there was nobody there. but I heard a girl laugh and then the door closed. So like my pulse is getting a little higher at this point. So I go over and I try and open the door and it won't open at first. So I have to go, and the bolt had been locked on it. So I had to put the key in again to unlock this door. I get back up to the teacher's lounge and found that all of the stuff in my bag that I'd left for the tour had been dumped out and smashed.
Oh, wow.
And like, I didn't think, my first thought wasn't, oh, a ghost has done something. So I called school security, right? And they called me back a few days later and they were like, we see this guy. He's a tall guy, goes in there. He's wearing a black jacket. It says guide on the back. And I was like, well, that's me. Is there anything else? And they're like, that's it. And they have this footage of what looks like me walk into the teacher's lounge, take out my bag of stuff, break everything, and then just stares at the camera for 10 minutes before it walks out the front door. And meanwhile, I'm on the camera in the basement while it's all happening.
So you're simultaneously, they're seeing you in that room, but you're in the basement and you're being videotaped in the basement.
Yeah, I'm on the security camera in the basement when the box slides out, and nothing.
Boy.
They tell me that they think it was a time lapse or something, like that the times weren't synced up on the video, and they think that I'm pranking them. But it shook me to my core. I was like, absolutely not. Am I walking through that building alone ever again?
Yeah, you know, that's the a lot of people don't realize when these things happen. You know, people look at, well, if they never had it happen to them, they look, oh, maybe this guy's a little strange, or he's trying to pull something, or he's trying to promote his tours or whatever. You know yourself, you didn't do it. And that entity was trying to mimic you for some reason.
And that's the most disturbing part to me, right? Is that it looked like me.
What do you think about time slips? Because, you know, I'm going to tell you another little quick story, and then we'll keep going on about this. And my regular listeners, oh, no, he's going to talk about that cafe. But years ago, I used to be into photography as much as broadcasting. I love photography. And I'd go up to Mount Rainier, and I'd go up to a place called near Clearview, up by Mount Rainier. But when I was a kid, my parents, for some reason with my grandparents, almost every weekend they had to go for a ride. Where did they go? They went up by Clearview, you know, up by Mount Rainier, because there was a diner there. And my grandfather had to have his coffee. That's what a ride consisted of. Well, let's go have coffee. Well, okay. And, you know, you're sitting in the back of a Rambler, all crunched up because they were small cars. And, you know, years went by. I forgot all about that. And I'm up there with my two sons. And my sons say, hey, Dad, look at that sign, that reader board sign on the side of the road. Hamburgers and soda, $1. You know how kids are.
Yeah.
So I had to pull in there. So I pull in, honestly, Chris, this is what's really weird. All the cars in the parking lot, okay, and it was a gravel parking lot, I can tell you that, were old cars. I'm talking about, 20 years old. All of them, okay? And then when we go into the cafe, everybody is in there. Looked like how my grandmother dressed. Wearing dresses like 20 years old, clothing that's 20 years old, glasses, the older style. Everybody's staring at me and my sons. And I'm kind of feeling uncomfortable when I'm looking at these people. Like, we don't fit in here. This is weird. But we ate the food. It was good. And then we left. But have you ever felt when some people are actually, they're staring at you. They're not just like not trying to stare at you. They're staring at you. And
absolutely.
Yeah. The week later, I decided I want to go back there and get some more pictures of this waterfall up there. And my son said, yeah, let's do that. And let's get hamburgers there again. And I go, okay, that was a good way to, get some company with me. So
Yeah.
we're driving on the road and I'm going up and down the road. I can't find the place. I can't find it. I see a place that looked like it was a building there at one time. It burnt down. But I didn't see the cafe. And we got up and down that area like 3 or 4 times, double checking. I stop at the little store. It's there by the river. And I go in there and I go, hey, a week ago, we were at this cafe. You know, that's a place that has like, they advertise hamburgers for $1. And the lady like dropped her mouth jaws open. And she goes, that place like burnt down 20 some years ago.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm really, it bothers me because, you know, I keep thinking, what happens if we would have stayed in that place a minute too long? Could I have been stuck in that time warp? It tells me these people naturally had to be dead or whatever. I don't know if were they ghosts. I don't know what they were, but they were people in there. And they were dressed 20 years out of date, at least, along with their cards. I don't know. Have you ever run across anything like that investigating anything?
It's so funny that you bring that up, actually.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I do have something. Years and years ago, when I was 16, I really wanted to go on this cross-state trip, right? I got my license, and I was like, I'm going out. I'm driving across Washington. I'm just going to take out the atlas and find everything that's amazing. And as I was out in Western Washington, coming out, exploring the peninsula, there was this town called Grisdale that was marked on the map as a ghost town. And of course, I was like, if it's a ghost town, I'm going to it. That's happening. And I remember going out and following the map, and it started getting dark. The sun was going down, and this fog just rolled in. And I got to the point where the road was supposed to turn off to Grisdale. And I'd asked for just confirmation of directions at a gas station, probably 20 miles back on the road. And they're like, yeah, you'll go and it'll be just a dirt road into the woods. You go a little ways down it and you'll see what's left of the town. It's mostly just building foundations, nothing else out there at this point. And I was like, all right, well, I'm still going to go see what I can find. And I get to that turnoff that I was supposed to be at. And there were just lights all down the road in front of buildings, houses, just like all these lights all up and down these buildings. And this Model T starts just bombing down the street behind me. And it was coming up on me so hot that instead of taking the turnoff, I just kept going straight down the road. And I swear it was like on my bumper for probably another 10 miles before I took a turn left down the road, and it just disappeared into the fog.
That's scary.
And I was like freaked out by it. So I went kind of a distance away that night. I found a place to just sleep in the car. And that next morning I cruised back around, and the point where I was going to turn off and go down to see the town, nothing, just a dirt road. None of the buildings or anything that I'd seen the day before.
No lights, no nothing, no
nothing. Absolutely. I think about it all the time. Because like it's the only time I've ever seen, other than like a car show, an old Model T coming down the road, and to have it drive so aggressively was really bizarre.
But to go back and find nothing, that's why I'm wondering, you know, to the listeners out there, we have between all the apps and on iHeartRadio, we're on some of the radio stations, well, over 3 million listeners. And I'm just wondering if any of you out there have ever encountered a time slip. If you have, just go to our website and fast blast me. I'm kind of curious if you have encountered. But, you know, it sounds like you encountered something similar to what I encountered.
Yeah, it's interesting to me, too, that we are both sort of on this journey outwards when it happened, too. And in the old sort of lumber era of Washington, too.
Well, you know, I had one advantage over you, Chris. You know what that was? I ate a hamburger and a Coke out of the deal.
I didn't get anything.
You didn't get nothing but scared.
Yeah, that is true. That was my only takeaway.
Yeah, I didn't actually get scared about it to after, you know, we went back there and when the clerk said that place burnt down about 20 years ago, that really freaked me out. But, you know, you kind of like brushed it off the back of my head. Well, maybe it was my imagination and me and my kids never had a hamburger there. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the thing. I feel like you talk yourself out of it at some point. Because for years I was like, did I just miss the turn? Did I find something else entirely? And there was just some random person in a Model T.
Yeah, but
But I don't know.
how do you explain the lights and all the buildings that then all of a sudden it's not there?
Yeah, that's the strangest part to me. I mean, it was before apps or anything, so I don't have like a digital record of my route or anything. I just had the old road atlas to run by.
Well, have you ever encountered, you had that entity down at that beautiful high school at Tacoma. By the way, I mean, people could Google that school. It's one of the most unique backdrops of a high school probably in this country. And if I remember right, a lot of movies have been filmed there too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most famous was 10 Things I Hate About You with Heath Ledger and Julia Stiles.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I remember that one. Yeah, it was filmed right there.
Yeah, you're right. Stunning building. 195,000 square feet of just perfection.
Yeah, I'm really surprised they made a high school out of it, but what can I say? I mean, has any of the security, when you also, going back to that for a minute, when you said that wasn't me, did you ask any of the security people, have they encountered anything strange and mystic in that building?
I got the distinct impression from the security team that they are very professional and deal with people's shenanigans a lot. And so I don't think they were in the mood to talk about anything paranormal. And they certainly weren't in the mood for high school shenanigans from an adult.
No, and they were probably scared to bring it up too, because job security wise.
Yeah, but the night engineers that I've worked with there have all told me really similar accounts of experiencing that girl wandering around the school with them at night.
Interesting. I heard rumors that there was a girl walking around there like in a nightgown or something.
Yeah. She's almost always described the same way. And it's hard to know which of the stories could be the origin for it, because there have been multiple tragedies in that hyper-local zone of always a 14-year-old girl.
Oh, yeah. I mean, let's face it, old Tacoma, I mean, Seattle was rough, but Tacoma was rougher than Seattle ever could have been in a lot of areas across the country. Next to even San Francisco, where they had, the caves and where they would kidnap people and all that stuff to put them on ships. I mean, Tacoma had that reputation too.
Yeah, Tacoma did have quite a legacy of organized crime for a while there. Our bootlegging days were nothing to be scoffed at. And we were one of the few cities that was engaged in reverse Shanghaiing, where, the normal Shanghaiing, right, where they would, drug or abduct a sailor. He would wake up out at sea and have to work that time off before being returned. Because Tacoma had expelled our Chinese community in the 1880s. Afterwards, there became a really profitable market of actually smuggling Chinese nationals into the city to do cheap labor.
Oh, yeah.
And with them came a lot of opium and illicit activity for a long time.
Well, there's a place right by the federal office, by the IRS, not the federal building, courthouse, but where the IRS is located right off of First Avenue. And if you go there onto the right of it, there's a little hill bank. Again, there's like doors where businesses used to be. That's what I used to find. It was so unique that there was all these shops there and stuff like that. And it's weird. And if I remember right, too, they got a tunnel going. I hear rumors that old train tunnel, that's closed up going under the hill over, where the houses are built. Supposedly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you heard anything about it being haunted?
The closest thing I've heard to that one itself being haunted was the legend of the Skoog, which I don't know if you ever
I haven't
came across the Skoog.
No.
The Skoog was, I still to this day, through all my research, don't know if it was an actual speakeasy or if it's just a myth, but it was an illegal community bar. It was in somebody's basement. They called it the Skoog. And in the back of it, there was a hole in the floor. that people would drop things down like beer bottles and they would never hear it hit. And based on my sort of work and research in it, it's very likely that it would have been on top of that old Union Pacific tunnel that they dug for the railroad, but it flooded so frequently they abandoned the project and just sealed it up, but didn't fill it in. And so there's always been sort of an urban legend about, you know, things disappearing into the tunnel from various portals that have showed up. But I still have no idea. I've heard people talk about the Skoog, but I've never met anyone who was in the Skoog. Or if they were, they've still kept a secret.
I know Tacoma's really rich. Now, Chris, we need to take a break. This is about 4 minutes long. When we come back, do you have some, you know, ghost stories or like cemeteries, old hotels across Washington? A lot of people don't realize Washington has a lot of ghost towns. And towns that's very close to it, like Roslyn, you know, that is a place very close to being a ghost town. But there's some that's really ghost towns here, and old abandoned cemeteries and stuff out of place. I'm thinking up by Black Diamond. I can't think of the name. It was a coal town in the 1880s, all the way up to around 1900, and they abandoned the town. And I can tell you, they got an old cemetery there, and people used to hike up there to get bottles and stuff with, you know, in that little community because there's no buildings left. But some strange, you know, cases of hauntings around that cemetery. We'll be back with Chris. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio. Check out our website for a guest we have on tomorrow and Friday and Sunday at www.nightdreamstalkradio.com. We'll be right back.
Do you like the weird and unusual? Martin Eddington is the author of over 140 strange and unusual books. He's an engineer who has an analytical perspective and writes about his paranormal experiences and his research and conclusions on strange topics. Book categories include longevity, immortality, the paranormal, spirituality, aliens and UFOs, time and dimensions, ancient history, legendary beings, strange science, self-help, and much more. Learn the details about all these books by Martin Eddington and purchase them at his website, www.mkeddingtonbooks.com. That's MKETTINGTONBOOKS.com. These great, strange, and unusual Martin Eddington books are also available on Amazon.
Hi, this is Val Von Torn of Metatron Power and Light. You're listening to Gary Anderson and Night Dreams Talk Radio.
There's a new air around me. The waves crash onto my feet. Breathing in my surroundings. I fall into a daydream. I look back to the palm trees in the hills by the sea, where I can set myself free to finally be at peace. Everything looks a little different without you next to me holding my hand, but I'm okay with it. I'm just fine, taking it all one step at a time, moving slower than ever before. Somehow it feels like I'm doing so much more, lost in moments in my own mind. I feel less lonely when it's me, myself, and I.
The strange news in brief. I'm Guy Ticker. Bizarre UFO film during storm. As for what the weird object could be, some UFO enthusiasts have suggested that the anomaly could be an alien craft of some kind. I'm Guy Ticker. The strange news is brought to you by Night Dreams Talk Radio Network. Do you have a strange story? Contact us at nightdreamstalkradio.com. You are listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio Network, the home of Night Dreams Talk Radio, with Gary Anderson, syndicated worldwide. Paranormal Talk Radio, like you remember.
And we are back with Chris. Now, Chris, haunted cemeteries. Let's start there.
Okay. I mean, you, just before the break, brought up the great one of Black Diamond.
Oh, yeah.
Which is out by the ghost town of Franklin.
Franklin is it. I forgot the name. That's it.
And that by itself, like, there's not much left in Franklin, right? Like, mostly foundations, some of the old mining carts, but it does have the Franklin shaft. Have you seen that?
Yeah, that goes down 800 feet. And, you know, I was one of the people that got the community around there to do something about it. You know, going back 30, 40 years ago, that pit wasn't even covered. And then they finally put like chain link over it. And I said, look, somebody's going to fall down and they're gone. They're history. And then I think the last time I was able to get up there, because that's a long hike, they put rails over it from, train tracks and fencing, for you can't fall through. But that was scary because people, even when it was chain link fence, I saw kids running across it.
Oh, God. That churns my stomach even thinking about it.
That's a big drop, you know that.
Yeah. So the Franklin shaft is terrifying, but Black Diamond is one of the, I think, most active cemeteries in the state of Washington. And, I know multiple people have gone out there and done a variety of investigations, and you almost always come back with voices and the sound of like miners. You hear the equipment coming back. And the one that I've experienced is there's a horse. Multiple people that I've talked to have gone out and seen this. It's just a white horse that wanders around the cemetery at night and never lets you get close enough to touch it, and then wanders off. But I've never seen any like evidence left behind of the horse. You don't find hoof prints or anything.
Or droppings.
There's just, which is bizarre, right? But yeah, I've talked to lots of people who've experienced this horse and these voices in the Black Diamond Cemetery.
Well, that would be scary too, and to think about it, and even in Franklin, when you go there too, have you ever checked out that little cemetery in Franklin?
Oh yeah, the remnants out there of the mining community. Yeah, fascinating, right?
Oh yeah.
One of my favorites is actually the one out by Tenino. Tenino has a little community cemetery that dates back quite a ways, and they have a plot on the edge where they buried the first people who were in the territorial prison of Seattle.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that.
Yeah, so before Washington was a state, they had a territorial prison called the Seattle Penitentiary, and it's in what is now the town of Bucota, which is right next to Tenino. And yeah, the first people that died inside that penitentiary got buried in sort of this mass grave on the edge of the cemetery, which is outside of Tenino now. And that place has got some serious spookiness to it. Of all the places I've been where you just feel that electricity on the back of your neck and that intense need to leave, that's right up there on the top.
Have you ever gotten scared, Chris? Be honest.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. I've had some times where I've definitely been like, this is not the place to be. I'm getting out of here.
Yeah, that's what I'll be honest. When I was young, I've been married quite a few times, but this wife, I'm going to admit, over 45 years, so I'm happy. But one of my wives hey, let's go, before we got married, she was a little strange. Let's go to the cemetery and just hang out there with a bunch of friends and do a little drinking. And I did that. I'll tell you what, it was the most scariest feeling you could ever have. You felt like you were being watched. And if hair can stand up, which it can because, your pores tighten up, I tell you, I was scared.
Sometimes you just feel it, right? Like something's just wrong and you shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
I've had that a few times out in my investigations and pursuits of things throughout Washington.
What's your favorite spot for haunts, for going to try to find proof that, there's a hereafter?
Man, that's a tough question to answer. I'm an Eastern Washington guy originally, before I settled over here in Tacoma, and I love the east side of the state. And there are so many places over there that I think still have just a real, I don't know, connection or ambiance to that sort of history that came before. And so any of the old town cemeteries along Highway 2, whether you're there for paranormal or not, just have really good energy and are very interesting to go explore out there. I think of all the places that have given me that like red flag, Clay City in Washington is the one that I.
Now, where's
I
Clay
think about
City
the
at? I heard of it, but I can't figure out where it's located at.
I can tell you the instructions I was given in college, or I can tell you sort of the geographic region that it's in.
It's over there. Okay, no, where roughly is it?
It's out by Kapowsin. So if you go pretty much due south from Puyallup, not far from the sort of town of Kapowsin, there's this old town site, long since abandoned, where they did bricks. They had a brick kiln and a whole production out there, and it's called Clay City. And it's now, I believe, either wildlife refuge or owned by a timber company. I forget what its designation is these days. But the old, like, remnants of the town site, mostly just flat foundations now, except for one structure made out of brick, is all that's left of Clay City out there.
Very interesting. In my younger days, going out and doing photography, I used to go out and take a lot of pictures of old ghost towns. I loved going between, Washington, Oregon, and Nevada. A lot of old ghost towns. And, I was one of the first people to get a digital, professional digital camera. That's when they first were being tested before they came out. I had a 1.5 megapixel Nikon SLR digital camera. Hey, it made 4x5s. But it worked flawlessly. But, I would go into some old building, right? And I'd go to take a picture and the thing would just like freeze up. I'd go out of the building, we drive away, it worked perfect.
It's amazing to me when that happens. We had that happen on a tour of mine recently, actually, of Stadium High School, where a woman was mostly interested in the architecture, but she was just snapping shots in every room that we went to. And she was down in the locker room in the basement and took a picture, and her camera just froze, went completely brick, and didn't turn. She couldn't get it to respond at all until the next day. But she ended up sending me the last picture that she got off of it. And there's sort of a weird motion blur in the right-hand corner of it. But behind it, perfectly clear, is a girl in a white gown just standing in the corner of the locker room.
I got a funny feeling what girl it is, too.
Right? She's definitely made her presence known a few times.
That is really eerie. And I take it your wife goes with you on these tours?
Oh, absolutely not.
No?
No, my wife is a firm believer that if there's a paranormal, it belongs outside and she belongs inside. She goes with me on every adventure around the world. She's a phenomenal travel writer, and she loves to go out and explore. But when it comes to like the dark and the paranormal, she's like, enjoy that.
Have you ever thought about some of these places you go to? And I've watched a lot of your clips on TikTok, and I have to admit, really interesting. So if you're in Washington or you plan to come to Washington near the Seattle-Tacoma area, you get a hold of Chris and go on one of his tours. But I got to tell you, aren't you worried about maybe bringing attachment back home to you and maybe your wife?
I would like to believe that I am very good at preemptive precautions.
Okay, wait a minute. JC, he's a world-renowned famous. He's been on documentaries and everything and interviewed. Okay, and a lot of ghost hunters even go to him. Tell him how he should. JC, my producer, I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, yeah. No, I had no idea that this was in his skill set.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's how I found him. But, JC, what should he be doing before he goes into any of these haunted places?
Well, I always tell everybody, whatever your higher power is, you need to embrace it, use it, and use that as protection going before you get there, during, and after. And you might want to come up with something, to make sure that nothing follows you home. Be stern about it, because I have seen many things follow people home. I've had them follow me home, for the love of God. But that's what I always, strongest piece of advice I can give anybody is to, whatever your higher power is, embrace it and use it.
Yeah, he has a picture of a cemetery and a tree, and there's a ghostly figure right next to the tree. It was taken at night, and I've tried to debunk that one, and I really can't. I first thought it was part of the tree, but then when I really got into it and looked at the pixels and all that, it's like something, I don't know what it is. Have you ever, Chris, saw something strange or got a picture of anything yourself strange?
I have never been able to capture a picture of anything, but I've had multiple times where I've had something talk to me. That seems to be my thing.
What do they say to you? Do they ask for a cigarette, or they tell you to get out of there?
No, I always get information. And I think this goes back to my why I don't bring things home, is I'm very clear in my intention whenever I do whatever it is, that my only goal is to make sure that the story of a place is known. And I walk into a place and I walk out of a place being very clear that my goal is to keep the stories of a place alive. And I think whatever I've encountered has always been receptive to that. And so I don't get messed with. And so for me, I'll be in a place and I'll hear someone say something to me. And it's usually, like the little girl laughing, or someone will say their name or say, hey, come down here. And then I'll follow something down a hallway. But I don't see things often, but I often hear stuff.
I don't know which is worse, seeing something or hearing it. I don't know which is one. I think both of them would be I'll be the first one. If I ever go out and look for ghosts again or go anything, I'm going to wear Depends, because I am not going to wet my pants again. I'll tell you that one.
I think seeing is worse. Probably in my mind, seeing is always going to be worse.
I got to jump in here. JC, yeah. I want you to tell Chris that time you stuck your head up in that attic. You opened the hatch and stuck your head up in the attic. What did you see? And I'm not talking about your ex-mother-in-law.
You're talking about the one with the crawl space I crawled in.
Yeah.
So anyway, I crawled in this. First of all, before I ever got into it, the lady showed me where it was. It was a crawl space inside of a closet. As soon as she opened it up and showed me where it was, it had like a paneled door kind of just stuck in there, but it blew off. And she freaked out. And I was like, no, don't worry. It's just, a draft or a vacuum, which it wasn't. I knew what it was. It was something in there that was very angry. But I wasn't going to tell her that, because she was just going to feed it more and it's going to get stronger. So anyway, I'm getting there on my hands and knees on this board doing what I got to do to get this thing out of there. And I could, Gary and Chris, I could feel this thing. It's just, when you can feel something beaming to my left. And I'm like, oh, I got to turn and look and see this, what's over there. So I turned my head real slowly, and I think these things pick visions out of your brain, because what I saw was pretty much the face of the Jeepers Creepers guy, real evil looking. And it just like bum rushed me, knocked me over and went up out of there. But that is what I saw. And again, I think it just picks your brain what's scary or whatever. But to see that in a crawl space, like 2 feet from you, that evil grinning Jeepers Creepers guy, and then he bum rushes you, it was just, that was horrible. I got to tell you.
That's not why I figure you have your problems you have today from what happened to you that day when you went in that crawl space.
You can't unsee that stuff. I got to tell you that. That was a horrible sight.
Well, Chris, this is where you got to be careful, because one of these days you're going to go someplace and investigate it, and you're going to bite off more than you can chew. You know that. You're actually, by doing this, investigating all these places, you're inviting something maybe one of these days to come knocking on your door.
Well, we will continue to roll the dice then, I suppose.
That's all you can do.
I am a firm believer that anything that lingers just at its core wants to have its story known. And by doing that, you're bringing some peace to the area.
Well, they're trying probably to make some type of closure.
I'd like to think so. The old Western State Hospital grounds across from current Western State Hospital.
That's haunted.
For sure. And I think for all the tragedies that people don't expect,
Well, the old mental hospital, let's face it, I'm going to take a scenario. Western State is old as it is, but if you go across the road, there's a beautiful pond, and then there's a trail that kind of goes up the hill. And then you go up the top of the hill, there's the remains of one of the oldest parts of the mental hospital. And I tell you, I've been there towards dusk to get pictures years ago. And I tell you, I had some really scary thoughts going in my brain. I wanted to get out of there right away.
That we, I've done tours of that park at night.
You're brave.
And it's one of those things though where I'm a very big believer that story needs to be known, because I imagine growing up in the area and going out and exploring it, you've heard so many various things about it, and then just through my years of research on it, the actual story of that old men's dormitory on top of the hill there.
Can you share that with the listeners?
I'd be happy to.
Yeah.
So when Western State was established, they went through a variety of superintendents who kind of directed the medical, direction of that facility. And one of them was a big believer that non-violent members of patients there could find some peace and happiness if they were given the opportunity to work outside. And so on top of that hill where the old ruins were, they built a men's dormitory. And the people that lived there got to work on this farm. And they had this beautiful farm. They raised some of the nation's award-winning cows. They had turkeys, ducks, a whole orchard, and they produced food not only for the hospital itself, but then they would sell it outwards in Washington State. And eventually, it was determined that they had to be paying those patients minimum wage. And through a variety of other reasons, they decided that what would make the most sense would be to close it, entirely shutter the project, and then to start administering psychotropic drugs to these patients instead of allowing them to work outside. And there was an 84% suicide rate of the patients that they marched from that dormitory back into the main hospital and started administering these drugs to. And something about them just gets stuck to that space. And over the years, a lot of things just got drawn to it. And from doing tours or exploring it in my youth, yeah, you go up there and you feel something like a heaviness and a sorrow up there.
You do. I mean, I would even feel it breathing. You could just feel it. It was something that is like you didn't feel welcome there for some reason.
Yeah. And that was built on top of years and years. The first 3,000 patients that died at Western State were buried just at the base of that hill, and they are still there to this day. A lot of those bodies were never removed from the original cemetery, and so are still in the park at the base of that hill where the old ruins are.
And that's scary too when you think about that. You know, there was a mental hospital here in the news about a year ago. They literally found, you know, it was thousands of bodies and a lot of even remains where they cremated a lot of the patients, and they had no record who they were. And I think that's the worst way when you pass on, you know, they bury you or you're cremated. And in this case, they found in the basement ashes of people they didn't know who it belonged to. I mean, just think about that. If there is spirits or there are portals or whatever, I mean, these people aren't going to be happy campers. You know that. There's no closure.
Too, right? Like, not just the anonymity, but back then, anything could be deemed mental illness, you know, from postpartum depression to syphilis, to just like having PTSD, anything at all could just get you sent away to be forgotten.
A lot of husbands did that to wives, by the way.
Exactly, right? And so I think that sorrow and combined with being anonymous is really tough.
Well, how do you have a website are you on YouTube because you put out all these video, you know, it's so exciting. I haven't seen anybody else do it as good as what you do. I mean, how can the people find you?
Everything I do is under Pretty Gritty Tours. So I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on YouTube, and most prolifically, I'm on TikTok these days. It's all Pretty Gritty Tours.
Be careful on TikTok because guess what? Congress are trying to ban TikTok again. They got this.
It's true. But, you know, growing up in this digital age, I've learned just to ride the wave of the technology that comes and goes.
That's right. But YouTube, check him out on YouTube. I'll tell you what, get yourself something to drink, you know, get a fire going, prop up your feet, because I'll tell you, what he does, it's really intriguing. And once you want to go visit the places that he's talking about.
Well, that is my ultimate goal. I just think this state has such a beautiful history and a rich legacy, and I would love for people to come and get to experience it more.
Again, go ahead and share how they can find you if they want to go on a tour. How can they do it?
So our main tours are going to be at prettygrittytours.com. I have a whole menu of weekly tours that we offer, not just ghost tours, but beer tours and history tours and beyond. And then all of my specialty stuff I always announce through our various social media channels. So if I do, a tour of a ghost town, or we go on an expedition to Eastern Washington, I try and announce those beforehand, because Tacoma is my home base, but all of the state of Washington is ripe for exploration.
Oh, yeah. Now, do you have a website, or are you on Facebook or anything?
Yep. prettygrittytours.com for the website. And then Facebook is still Pretty Gritty Tours.
Well, Chris,
I try and keep it simple.
Chris, I really enjoyed having you on, and maybe we can get you on, like 6 months from now. And I'm sure you'll have some more cool stories to share.
I'll try and gather some good ones for you.
Okay.
I really appreciate you having me on.
Well, Chris, you have a great weekend that's coming up.
Thank you so much. You as well.
Okay, my friend. You take care.
All right. Bye.
You sure that wasn't, JC, you're like an ex-relative that was up in that crawl space and they were just trying to get back at you?
Well, if it was, it worked. I got to tell you, I can't watch that movie anymore after that. It ruined me.
It would ruin me, too, I tell you, if anything to see. But again, maybe, did you see that movie before you were, like in a month or two, or seeing previews on TV or anything like that before you did that checking?
No, I'd seen it. It's probably been like 6 months to a year, but I've seen it a couple times because it's been, it's got a few years on it. But just that image, it must, because I think these things pick things out of your brain that they know will, either get your attention, scare you, or just stop you in your tracks. And that was one of them.
Yeah, my wife is still mad at me that I dropped my cell phone the other night again. And I said,
no.
and I said, hey, would you turn the light on? And then she kind of, and she got out of bed because I woke her up from a dead sleep. But thank God I did, because she was snoring like a you-know-what. And then she turns the light on. I said, will you be so kind to pick it up? And she goes, why? Are you broken? I said, I'm not reaching underneath the bed.
Mm-mm.
She said, wait till the morning and get it.
Oh, boy. So she was the lesser of what the punishment of the monster that you was going to get.
I don't know. See, you never know.
You never know.
Yeah.
You never know. Let me tell you something, Gary. Someday you could put your, when you get out of bed in the morning or at night to go to the bathroom, you put your feet down on the floor, and if you feel something grab your ankle and your wife's beside you,
well, then
hey.
it might be my girlfriend.
It's something, I'll tell you.
Yeah, something. But I got to tell you this. I don't know if I ever told you this. We bought this house. They never disclosed to us, which they're supposed to by law, that this house burnt down at one time. We were at the house after we bought it about a month, and we went out, because it's almost 2 acres and it's all cedar trees, and there was an area of grass. And then we, were out by the bushes. My kids said, hey, there's tons of burnt lumber everywhere, scattered. Okay. And yeah, I didn't think much of it. But then when we put the horse pasture in, we had to get a bulldozer and do some, leveling of the ground. They buried a lot of the old part of the house that burnt down. Found out the house did burn down and they rebuilt it. And then we found out there was some girl, I can't remember the name. My kids do, because they swear the house is haunted. But there was a young girl that perished in this house fire.
Oh, my.
And we didn't know that.
Wow.
And then, my kids growing up, and, my late son, Kevin, my late son, Scotty, and then Ricky and Michael, and they would all be talking about this one girl, be walking down the hallway, and her name is such and such, and then she would disappear.
Phew.
I never saw it myself.
Yeah, listen, that does not surprise me. And here's the thing, even if it wasn't an intelligent haunting, the residual alone, you've probably seen a lot of stuff from it, because that definitely left an imprint on there with a fire and somebody may have died. Jeez.
Well, when we looked at the records, yes, there was a girl that died in the house fire here.
Yeah, and every state's different about that. Some that demands that you've got to release that information. I know New York State was the first one in like that.
Washington too. You have to disclose, if the house ever burnt down, and you have to disclose if it's haunted. Believe it or not.
Yeah, and that's the one that's gray area with some states. Now I do know a lot of them. You do have to mention that if it's haunted.
Yeah. So who's our guest tomorrow? What are we going to be talking about tomorrow?
Oh, our guest tomorrow is Mark Leslie. Now, he's going to be talking about true, scary, paranormal stories. So that's going to be a good one. You need to buckle down on that one.
Tell your friends about it. Share it, on your media. Tell the people about our show. If you haven't given us a thumbs up, Guido is on vacation, so he can't come and break your thumb. But give us a thumbs up and tell your friends about our show. Again, we're growing now on YouTube finally, but we've been hitting, believe it or not, over 8 million downloads since Christmas of our past shows a night. Figure that out, huh? Who says we're not small potatoes anymore? We're medium-sized potatoes now, aren't we?
That's right. We're medium taters.
Okay, well, again, check out Metatron's Power and Light's newest song. And, I want to say, good night to Rory, to Nancy. Space Case, Barb, and everybody else on chat. Again, tell your friends they can actually join us on chat. Well, till tomorrow, everybody have a good one. Stay on the right side of the campground, because you never know what could pull you into those bushes.
long trail through frozen fog and mist. The cold start through their bodies.